There are two ventilation systems on the A330, the lavatory and galley system and the avionics ventilation system. The lavatory and galley system is completely automatic. Cabin air is passed through the lavatory and galley areas and is drawn from them. On ground, or if delta P is less than 1 psi, an extraction fan runs automatically to extract the air. There are no controls or indications associated with the lavatory and galley ventilation system. Now let's look at the avionics ventilation system. The avionics ventilation system provides cooling air for the avionics compartment and the flight deck instruments. Let's now look at how the system works. Air recirculated from the cabin is provided to the avionics equipment and is extracted by an extract fan. These fans operate continuously as long as the aircraft electrical system is supplied. On ground, with engines not running, air blown through the avionics equipment is discharged overboard via an overboard valve. An avionics ground cooling unit is installed to ensure the cooling of the avionics in case of extremely hot air outside. The cooling system is integrated into the avionics ventilation system but operates independently. The ground cooling unit operates on ground when the engines are stopped and the air in the avionics compartment is too hot. It draws air from the avionics compartment through a fan and rejects it overboard through the ground cooling valve. On ground, with engines running, or in flight, the ground cooling unit and the fan are stopped. The ground cooling valve is closed. In addition, the overboard valve is closed and the air from the avionics equipment is blown through the inboard valve under the forward cargo compartment, then overboard through the forward outflow valve. The avionics equipment ventilation controller, AEVC, controls the avionics ventilation system and sends opening and closing signals to the overboard, inboard and ground cooling valves. The avionics ventilation overboard valve and the ground cooling valve are located below the forward fuselage. Both valves are inspected during the pre-flight walk-around for damage or obstruction. A section of the ECAM cabin pressurization page displays avionics ventilation system information. The ground cool indication provides information on the state of the ground cooling system and the vent extract on the overboard valve. Normally, they both remain white. The position of the ground cooling and overboard valves are shown. In this example, the valves are open. This is the indication that you will see when the aircraft is on the ground. In this example, the valves are closed. This is the normal in-flight configuration. In some failure cases, the overboard valve is partially open. On the ECAM, the valve indication changes to an intermediate position. A ventilation panel on the overhead panel contains two push buttons associated with the ventilation system. During the pre-flight cockpit scan, you should confirm that these switches are in the lights out position. The avionics ventilation system will then operate automatically and require no pilot input. This is a demonstration of an extract valve fault. You are the pilot non-flying. You are currently flying at your cruise flight level. Everything is normal. Click on the forward arrow to activate the failure. On the engine warning display, read the title of the failure. The ECAM caution ventilation extract fault appears amber, meaning that there is a problem with the ventilation extract system. Notice that the ECAM cabin pressurization page has been automatically called. Also observe that, on the ECAM cabin pressurization page, the ventilation extract message is shown in amber, indicating that there is a low extract flow detected in the avionics compartment. And on the ventilation panel, the amber fault light illuminated on the extract push button switch confirms the failure. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. When you switch to override, the amber fault light in the extract push button switch extinguishes and is replaced by the white override light, and the blue action line on the engine warning display disappears. On the ECAM cabin pressurization page, note that the ventilation system has been reconfigured, as the extract valve is now partially open to ensure adequate ventilation of the avionics system. This configuration is also used for the avionics smoke procedure. The ventilation system is now analyzed. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear vent. The status page is now displayed, and the engine warning display returns to a normal display. The inoperative system is ventilation extraction. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM action completed. Notice that the status reminder is displayed at the bottom of the engine warning display to remind you that there is something in the status page. To complete this module, let's look at some other abnormal indications and what they mean. If there is an overboard valve fault, the valve has to be controlled manually. Here, the overboard valve is still open after engine start. It has to be closed manually by setting the extract push-button switch to override. If this is unsuccessful, maintenance action is due. In the case of a valve failure in flight, if the override is unsuccessful, the outflow valves have to be closed manually. For this procedure, refer to the pressurization chapter. The actions to be performed are very similar in case of a ground cooling failure. This failure can be due to the ground cooling unit or to the ground cooling valve. While reviewing the status page after engine shutdown, note the avionics ventilation item in the maintenance status. It indicates that the avionic equipment ventilation controller requires a maintenance procedure at the next programmed servicing. This completes the ventilation system abnormal operation.